Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our whole mission here is to take these really big, complex sources, the research, the notes, all of it,
Right.
and turn it into something you can actually use immediately.
And today we're tackling a really critical, very tactical deep dive. It's actually a request from a listener who finds themselves just paralyzed when emotional stress hits that absolute peak.
Yeah.
We've talked before about these really high-level concepts, right? Like radical acceptance, which is a cornerstone of dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT.
And I think we have to start right there with that distinction because we loved the idea of radical acceptance. Intellectually, it's brilliant.
Right.
Accept reality as it is.
Yeah.
Don't fight what you can't change.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic tool for,
Sure.
long-term regulation.
For sure.
But let's be totally honest. The second you are genuinely, completely stressed out of your mind, we're talking a 9 or 10 out of 10 crisis.
Yeah.
That whole philosophical approach it goes out the window. It's impossible.
It is. It's completely inaccessible.
Your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, has basically just checked out for the day.
That's precisely it. When you're in that acute crisis state, you are not functioning in the conscious, thoughtful part of your brain. You're operating from the ancient reactive core.
The lizard brain.
The lizard brain, exactly.
Yeah.
Physiologically, your body believes it is fighting for its life.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the danger is a threatening email and not a, saber-toothed tiger.
Right. The response is the same.
So today's mission has to be purely tactical. We need immediate physical tools. We need, for lack of better terms, psychological first aid.
So it's a perspective shift.
Yeah.
We're not talking about tools for deep, long-term therapeutic surgery. We're not getting to the root cause today.
No.
This is the emotional equivalent of a tourniquet or a fire extinguisher. It's just designed to buy us time. That's it.
That is the crucial definition. The entire focus today is on crisis survival. These are short-term mechanisms with one single function: to bring the conscious part of your brain back online, even just for a moment. If we use that standard emotional intensity scale, 1 to 10, where 10 is the absolute maximum, the goal here is not some utopian zero stress. That's not realistic.
Not in a crisis.
Not at all. The aim is just to drop the intensity from an unmanageable, totally volatile 8, 9, or 10 down to a functional 6, or maybe a 5.
Because at a 6, you could think again.
At a 6, complex thought, reason, and mindful choices become possible again. You're back in the driver's seat.
Okay, so before we even get into the tools themselves, we need to define the situation we're actually trying to manage. We know that stress, in general, is sort of the gap between what's happening and what we expected to happen.
Exactly. The wider that gap, the higher the stress.
And at that 8, 9, or 10 intensity, that's when we hit what you call offline mode.
Yes, offline mode. It means those sophisticated logical parts of your brain are just. They're not accessible. You default to pure impulse, to those primal survival reactions.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
The big three. And the goal of every single tool we're going to discuss is to force a shift from that unconscious reactive offline mode to a conscious, aware online mode.
Now, here's the thing that I think really surprises people. The body's physical reaction to a crisis, it doesn't really care why it's happening.
It doesn't discriminate.
Our first thought is that these tools are for good things, for negative stress, distress, pain, trauma.
And that's where the nuance is so essential. Your body, your organism, reacts in a remarkably similar way to distress, negative stress, and what we call eustress.
Eustress, so good stress.
Extreme positive stress, excitement, elation. While the external situation is wonderful, the internal system is still experiencing an intense physiological overload.
Okay, let's make that concrete for a listener. Give me an example.
Okay. Imagine you're at a huge company meeting. In scenario 1, you receive scathing public criticism for a project you led. You're humiliated, you're afraid you might lose your job, total distress.
A nightmare. Got it.
In scenario 2, at that exact same meeting, you receive the highest possible praise, a massive unexpected bonus, and they announce your immediate promotion in front of everyone.
The dream scenario.
The absolute dream. The outcomes are polar opposites, but your body's reaction can be shockingly similar.
How so?
In both cases, you're in a high-intensity stress state. Your heart rate is going to spike. Your breathing will get shallow. You might even get tunnel vision. And later that night, you'll probably have trouble sleeping.
Even with the good news.
Absolutely, because in both scenarios, your system is flooded, whether it's with cortisol and adrenaline from fear or a tidal wave of dopamine and adrenaline from excitement. The system is overloaded. It's unstable. It needs to process this massive new information to recalibrate your sense of self.
I think most people would push back on that. I mean, if I'm feeling this immense joy, say I just got engaged or I won a huge award, why on earth would I want to regulate that? Why would I apply a crisis tool? I feel amazing.
And that is precisely the danger of eustress. Nobody feels motivated to regulate when they're feeling good, which is what makes it so insidious.
It's sneaky.
Very. I actually had a perfect little example of this recently. I was stuck on this tiny, almost meaningless work problem for about a week. Just a little cognitive knot I couldn't untie.
We've all been there.
Right. And then finally, I had that aha moment. I solved it, and I was just flooded with this intense rush of satisfaction. You know, that feeling of competence.
The good hormones just open the floodgates.
Completely. And for the rest of that day, I was walking around with these rose-colored glasses on. That extreme positive feeling, it didn't just make me more tolerant of others, it made me careless.
How so?
I was way too optimistic about other project timelines. I made a couple of commitments that were honestly a little beyond my capacity. I overlooked small but critical details in other tasks because I was just basking in the glow of that one tiny success. My critical filter was completely down.
So the positive feeling actually lowered your critical thinking. It compromised your ability to plan and use logic.
That's the mechanism. Eustress floods you with dopamine, which boosts confidence, but at the same time, it impairs the function of your working memory and your judgment. It's why people sometimes make terrible financial decisions right after a huge promotion.
Or why people in that initial head-over-heels phase of new love can do really reckless, impulsive things.
Exactly. The brain is compromised by positive emotional overload, just as it is by a negative one. The bottom line is this. If your stress is registering at an 8, 9, or 10 positive or negative, you need a tool to stabilize the system. You're managing the intensity of the experience itself because that intensity, it blinds you.
That's a powerful way to frame it. We're not just managing pain, we're managing arousal just to stay functional.
Okay, so now we know when to use these tools. Anytime we hit that 8 out of 10 or higher, now we get to the how.
The methods.
We categorize them using a framework I find really helpful.
The 3 doors.
The 3 doors. Imagine you're trapped in that volatile crisis room. Your emotions are bouncing off the walls. You don't have time to figure out how you got there or what the deep-seated reason is. You just need an exit. Right now.
And the doors are the body, the mind, and the senses.
Exactly. There are 3 immediate paths to get out of that room and regain some conscious control. And I love this framework because it gives you a choice right away. It stops that paralyzing feeling of being stuck.
So you can just ask yourself, which door is closest? Which one seemed easiest for me in this exact moment?
Precisely. And all 3 doors, it's important to note, they share one immediate singular goal. Distraction. We are intentionally, for a very short period of time, diverting our attention away from the source of the stress. We're just buying time.
And we need to be really clear with the listener on this point.
Absolutely. This needs to be underlined. We are not advocating for distraction as a long-term chronic strategy. That's just avoidance. And avoidance is the exact opposite of what this deeper philosophy is all about. But in this moment, this is a psychological emergency. We are using controlled, intentional distraction as a short-term survival mechanism.
It's the difference between taking painkillers right after a major surgery, which is short-term and intentional, versus becoming dependent on them to avoid ever dealing with the underlying issue.
That's the perfect analogy. This is post-op care, not a lifestyle.
Okay, so let's walk through the first door. Door 1, the body.
We start with the body because it is the most dominant, the most primitive, and by far the fastest route back to grounding yourself in the present moment.
When you're in a crisis, the fight or flight response has already taken over your physical self.
It has hijacked your physiology, so we have to hijack it back using physical input.
So even before the thoughts start racing or that destructive impulse kicks in, the body is already sending out these distress signals.
Yes.
And learning to spot those early physical cues is probably the key to stopping a 10 out of 10 explosion before it happens.
It's everything. The most reliable physiological symptoms are a rapid pulse. You can feel it pounding in your neck or your chest, a feeling of heat or a flush. Your field of vision might literally narrow.
Tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision, yes. And of course, the complete withdrawal of logical thought. If you can catch yourself right there, that's when you deploy TIPP.
I know for me, it's the heart rate, 100%. If I can catch that initial spike, that feeling of my heart starting to race before the heat rises and the yelling starts, I still have a chance.
That's the window.
Once the shouting begins, I know I've passed the point of no return. I am fully offline at that point.
That self-observation is the critical first step. And that's when we turn to the TIPP acronym, our core stack of body-based tools, to physically intervene.
All right, let's break TIPP down.
Okay, so T is for temperature. We use a sudden, intense shock of temperature to immediately shift your focus and stop that emotional feedback loop dead in its tracks.
And we're not talking about, like, gradually cooling down.
No.
This sounds like a system reset, a physical jolt.
It is a total jolt, and there's a deep physiological mechanism at work here. What you're actually doing is leveraging something called the mammalian diving reflex.
The mammalian diving reflex, what is that?
It's a primitive survival response. It's hardwired into all mammals. It gets triggered when cold water hits specific nerve clusters on your face, particularly around your eyes and temples, or sometimes even your wrists.
Okay.
When that cold stimulus hits those nerves, your body automatically thinks you've been submerged in cold water, and it goes into survival mode. It immediately activates the vagus nerve.
And that does what?
It sets off a whole cascade of reactions. Your heart rate slows down dramatically, your breathing becomes slower and more regulated, blood is shunted away from your limbs to protect your core organs.
Wow. So you're not just distracting your brain with a cold, you're actually forcing a physiological slowdown of your entire system through a primitive reflex.
They're bypassing the emotional vein entirely. It's a hack. DBT recommends splashing ice-cold water on your face, or even better, holding an ice pack directly across your eyes and cheeks.
The shock is the point.
The jolt is the point. It physically interrupts the stress cycle and forces your body to focus completely on the sensation of cold, which breaks the mental narrative.
Okay, that's powerful. So if temperature is the abrupt shock, what's next?
Next is I, intense exercise. This is about dealing with all that built-up energy.
The energy you need to metabolize.
Correct. I stands for intense, immediate physical activity. This is the acute release for all that accumulated stress energy that's just been stored in your body.
Because when you're in fight or flight, your body's getting ready for a huge physical effort.
Exactly. It's preparing to either fight a predator or run from it. If you don't use that energy, it just sits there and converts into tension, anxiety, and eventually burnout.
But what if I'm, say, stuck in a really high-stakes meeting, or I'm in a public place and I feel a panic attack coming on? I can't just start doing jumping jacks in the conference room.
Right. So intense has to be relative to the context. It must be immediate, but not necessarily obvious.
So what does that look like?
It could be as simple as walking away from the situation immediately, just excusing yourself to go to the restroom and back. The physical act of moving creates distance.
Right.
If you literally can't move, you can try isometrics. Tense every single muscle in your body as hard as you can for 10 seconds and then release. No one will even know you're doing it.
Or pacing in your office, running up and down a flight of stairs.
Vigorous, fast-paced household chores. The goal is just to metabolize those stress hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, before they have a chance to lock into your system and do damage.
You're basically completing the stress cycle that your body started. That makes perfect sense. Okay, next up is the first P, paced breathing.
This is the tool that's always available, and it can be done very discreetly. The standard techniques are things like 4-7-8 breathing.
4 seconds in, hold for 7, 8 seconds out.
Or box breathing, which is 4-4-4-4.
I have to say, though, when I'm at a 9 out of 10 trying to focus on specific counting, that can feel like just one more thing to be anxious about, like I'm going to fail at breathing correctly.
That is an excellent and really necessary point. The caution here is crucial. Do not let the counting become a new source of stress.
Right.
If the 4-7-8 ratio feels impossible or it's making you more anxious, just drop the numbers completely. Because the physiological science tells us that the key mechanism is the long exhale.
The long exhale. Why is that the secret weapon?
Because the exhale physically stimulates the vagus nerve.
There's that nerve again.
It's the superstar of calming down. It's the longest nerve in your autonomic nervous system, and it's basically the main highway of your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system.
So how does exhaling trigger it?
When you extend your exhale so it's noticeably longer than your inhale, you are physically applying a gentle pressure to that nerve bundle in your chest and abdomen. That sends a direct biological signal to your brain that says, the danger has passed. You can slow down now.
You're literally slowing your own heart down with your breath.
And it's biological feedback. So if counting stresses you out, just forget it. Simply focus on making the out-breath feel longer and slower than the in-breath. Focus on the sensation, not the math.
That reframing is a huge help. I can actually confirm how well this works. I mentioned a while back a really stressful situation with my son's school where I was seconds away from a full-blown rage episode.
Right.
And what I did was, first I physically moved my chair back from the table, I created distance, and then I just focused on taking these really deep, slow breaths. That combination bought me the 5 minutes I needed to not react impulsively.
It bought you time, which is the entire purpose of the TIPP skills.
Okay, finally, the second P paired muscle relaxation.
This technique is all about contrast. It enhances the feeling of relaxation by first introducing maximum tension.
Because when you're stressed, your muscles are already tense, but you're kind of used to it. You don't even notice it.
You're habituated to it, exactly. So by deliberately tensing a muscle group like clenching your fists as hard as you can, or pulling your shoulders up to your ears, or flexing your legs for 5 or 10 seconds, and then consciously completely releasing them.
You make the contrast so obvious that your brain can't miss it. The release feels that much more profound.
Exactly. It makes the relaxation signal much stronger than just trying to relax already stiff muscles. It's a very clear binary instruction to your body. Tense, now release.
Before we move on to the second door, the mind, I want to touch on something that's sort of related to body techniques, but a bit controversial in this acute crisis phase.
Okay.
It's the idea of using winning gestures. Standing tall like a superhero, arms out, or forcing a smile in front of a mirror, the whole fake it till you make it philosophy applied to posture.
Right, I know what you mean. And while DBT definitely uses things like body posture and mindful movement, if you're asking for my critical analysis in an acute crisis, I think that kind of forced posturing can be counterproductive.
Why? I mean, we just established that the body can influence the mind through biological feedback. Why can't forcing a winner posture make you feel more in control?
Because of the core distinction between acceptance and change. Acute crisis survival requires a moment of acceptance. You have to acknowledge the real painful feeling you're having, the fear, the rage, the grief, in order to get some distance from it.
Okay.
Forced posturing is fundamentally an act of change. It's trying to lie to yourself. It's saying, I'm confident and happy. When you are genuinely miserable and terrified, you're just masking the stress.
And masking the stress prevents you from getting that detachment.
Yeah.
You need to actually observe what's happening. You're just shoving the feeling down instead of creating a space between you and the feeling.
Precisely. If I am absolutely furious and I force my shoulders back and plaster a smile on my face for 15 seconds, the moment I relax, that fury is still there. And it's probably even more intense because now I've suppressed it.
It doesn't create the gap that TPP does.
Exactly. TIPP works by physiologically calming the system so that your cognitive brain can come back online and then accept reality. Forced posturing is an attempt to emotionally override reality. It's just delaying the inevitable eruption.
So in a crisis, stick to TIPP. It's about grounding, not performance.
Well said.
All right. Let's open door 2. The mind. This is the path to take when you are completely stuck in your head, when those cyclical racing thoughts just will not stop.
Yes, the rumination loop. For this, we deploy the S02E05 acronym. It's a really powerful short loop tool designed specifically to interrupt that automatic thought-to-reaction pipeline and give you a window of conscious choice.
Okay, let's walk through it. S-stop.
It's as literal as it sounds. Arrest the impulse or the thought immediately. This requires a kind of radical self-awareness.
So if you catch yourself starting that internal monologue, he always does this and I'm going to tell him.
You visualize a giant red stop sign. You end the sentence mid-thought. You just stop. You can observe the thought, but you don't engage with it, you don't develop it, you don't follow it down the rabbit hole.
Then T, take a step back. This is the distance piece we talked about, but applied consciously.
That's right. Physical distance is walking out of the room, moving to a window. Temporal distance is creating a pause, counting to 10 or 20, or even saying to someone, I need 5 minutes to think about that. I'll get back to you.
You're breaking that immediate and often harmful link between the stimulus and your reaction.
You're creating a gap. Then comes O, observe. And this is where that non-judgmental quality of DBT becomes absolutely critical.
Okay.
You have to simply notice without judgment what is happening right now. You're just cataloging the internal data. What are the physical sensations? Is your jaw clenched? What's the emotion? Is it rage? Is it fear? And what is the thought? Is it self-critical? Is it blaming? You just list the data points. You don't layer judgment on top of them.
That's the hardest part for me. The judgment is so automatic. I'll observe the anger, and my brain immediately jumps in with, why are you so angry about this? This is stupid. You shouldn't feel this way.
And that's judging the observation itself. It takes a ton of practice, which is why we say you have to train under a bit of a load. This practice of kind of Stepping outside of yourself and just watching the drama unfold like a scientist taking notes, that's controlled detachment.
I actually use a version of this when I get overwhelmed in big social gatherings. Instead of trying to force myself to participate, I'll intentionally just sit back and observe the group dynamics.
That's a great application.
I just watch who's interrupting whom, how does the volume change. I try to strip away my own anxiety about it, and it gives me this incredible sense of control, ironically.
That is a perfect description of conscious, non-judgmental observation. And the discipline is just gently bringing yourself back to observing the moment you catch yourself judging or planning a response.
Okay, and the final step. P, proceed mindfully.
Now you choose what to do next, consciously. If you've observed that your stress has dropped from a 10 to, say, a 7, maybe you can proceed with a rational conversation. But if the intensity is still at a 9, you consciously choose to loop back to S for stop, and maybe deploy a different tool, maybe a 2PP skill.
So S.P is the circuit breaker. But once you've broken the circuit, you might still need to redirect your mind, which I guess brings us to the IMPROVE acronym.
Exactly. IMPROVE is a list of mental distraction tools you can use after S.P has lowered the intensity a little. They take a bit more cognitive effort than TITP, so they're often for when the crisis drops to maybe an 8 or a 7.
Okay, let's run through them. I care. Imagery.
This is powerful, intentional visualization.
Yeah.
You mentally transport yourself somewhere safe and comfortable. And this isn't vague daydreaming. The goal is sensory richness.
So you're not just thinking the beach.
No. You're visualizing the smell of the salt, the color of the water, the feeling of the sun on your skin, the sound of the waves. It could be a real memory or a fictional place. Your mind can't effectively hold on to a terrifying thought loop if it's actively generating rich, alternative sensory data.
Okay. Next is M, meaning this one feels like the hardest one to do when you're in a panic.
It is the most challenging cognitive task in this phase, absolutely, but it can be very powerful. Meaning is about reframing the situation to find some purpose in it. And we're not talking about the cosmic purpose of your existence here.
Right.
We're looking for a small, immediate reframe. What's the lesson here? What is this challenge preparing me for? Just finding a potential meaning can reduce distress by shifting your brain from a victim state into a problem-solving state.
Okay, P prayer.
This is about utilizing faith or a connection to a higher power, whatever that means to you. For some, it's formal religious prayer. For others, it's just connecting to a sense of being part of something larger than yourself, which can be a huge support when your personal world feels like it's collapsing.
R, relaxation. That seems straightforward.
Yes, your standard relaxation techniques. Deep muscle relaxation, listening to calming sounds, that sort of thing.
Oh, bending.
This anchors your mind to the present by using intense focus. You pick one single thing, one sensation, and you commit your full attention to it.
Like what?
It could be the sound of the rain outside, the texture of the fabric on the chair you're sitting on, tracing the pattern of the floor tiles with your eyes, or just the feeling of your breath moving in and out. It stops your mind from fragmenting by giving it a single, solid thing to hold on to.
Vacation.
This is giving yourself a temporary and, very importantly, a controlled timeout. You're not solving the problem right now. You are scheduling a time when you will solve it.
So you're not just avoiding it indefinitely.
No. You give yourself explicit permission to step away completely for a set period. For the next 30 minutes, I will not think about this. Setting that timer makes it a conscious bridge, not an uncontrolled escape.
And lastly, E, encouragement.
This is positive self-talk. This is the one moment where that kind of motivational self-help talk is perfectly appropriate. When a crisis has shattered your confidence, you give yourself a quick boost.
You can do this. You've survived worse.
You are good enough. These simple phrases can counteract that natural wave of self-criticism that almost always comes with extreme distress.
Okay, so we've had door 1, the body, for a fast physiological reset. Door 2, the mind, for cognitive redirection. That brings us to door 3, the senses.
The path of the senses. This is all about engaging our 5 senses to provide immediate signals of safety and soothing. This is a really useful one when you feel emotionally depleted or just overwhelmed by too much input.
This one feels a little gentler, like it could be for an acute crisis, but also for managing chronic stress.
That's a great way to put it. The senses are our most immediate, tangible connection to the real, safe world. They pull us out of the scary, emotional world we're building inside our heads.
So how do we use them? Let's start with sight.
With sight, you need intense, intentional focus. Don't just vaguely look around the room. Pick one object, A lamp, a crack in the wall, a plant, and for a full minute, just analyze it. Its contours, its shadows, its colors, its textures. This forces your visual cortex to engage with the present reality, which diverts resources away from worrying about the past or fearing the future.
Okay. What about hearing?
Same principle. Active, intentional listening. Close your eyes and just attend to the sounds in your environment. Can you hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic? If you're in a busy place, can you distinguish the different tones of people's voices? Or, of course, you can put on music, something calming if you're anxious, something motivational if you're feeling frozen.
And smell, taste, and touch.
These are often most powerful when you use them together in an integrated ritual. And this brings us to what I think is a fantastic real-world analogy for how all these doors can work together, the coffee ritual.
I love this because making a cup of coffee is such a normal, mundane act. But when you really break it down, it's a perfect example of a complex, multi-door crisis tool.
Let's analyze it. You're at your desk, you get some terrible news, your stress hits a 9 out of 10, you decide, I need to make a coffee.
Okay, so right away you've got the body element. You have to physically get up and move to the kitchen. That's T for take a step back.
And the small movements of getting the machine ready, grinding the beans, that's a micro version of I for intense exercise.
Then you start actively engaging the senses. As the coffee is brewing, you lean in and you intentionally concentrate on that powerful, comforting aroma. That smell.
Then you pick up the mug and you anchor yourself by focusing on the feeling of the warmth in your hands. That's touch.
And when you take that first sip, you focus entirely on the temperature and the flavor. That's taste.
But here's the crucial final piece, the mind distraction element that people often miss. Instead of taking your coffee and going right back to your desk to stew about the problem.
Which is what most of us would do.
Right. Instead, you give yourself a conscious 15-minute timeout. You sit down somewhere else and watch something completely unrelated and engaging. A short stand-up comedy clip on YouTube is a great example.
You're using O for one thing, focusing on the video, and V for vacation, taking a timed break.
Exactly. The coffee ritual successfully uses all three doors, body, mind, and senses, for an intentional, controlled, and complex distraction. But, and this is the big but,
the power fades if it becomes constant.
If you're drinking coffee and watching YouTube nonstop all day, it's no longer a tool, it's a lifestyle of avoidance.
Okay, to wrap up the doors then. Body, mind, and senses. 3 paths to choose from when stress is overwhelming, and their only goal is controlled distraction to stabilize your system and bring your thinking brain back online.
And that brings us to what is maybe the most important danger we need to address in all of this.
Which is?
Confusing the bridge with the destination. These crisis skills, they must be a bridge to get you to a place of conscious action. They cannot become the place you live permanently.
Because if distraction is your only tool, if it's what you rely on all the time, that's just chronic avoidance. And that stops any real healing.
Exactly. If your default mechanism for dealing with any unpleasant feeling, even just boredom or mild frustration, is to immediately deploy one of these tools, scrolling on your phone, turning on the TV, pouring a drink, you are simply avoiding reality.
And that guarantees you never have to confront the root causes of your distress.
Which makes the deeper work of acceptance and change impossible.
Now, it's easy to spot the obviously toxic avoidance strategies, substance abuse, gambling, things like that. But we should also talk about the dark side of productive distraction.
This is such a critical insight because productive avoidance often gets praised by society. It goes completely unnoticed.
Give us some examples.
Think of the workaholic who is constantly chasing the next achievement and never takes a real break. Or the person who overexercises to the point of injury. Or the person who compulsively cleans or creates art.
These all seem like positive things.
They are. But they can also be powerful, unconscious compensation mechanisms used to avoid dealing with underlying emotional pain. They use the same resources, energy, and focus that our crisis tools use, but they're deployed unconsciously to avoid confronting difficult truths about trauma or grief or relationships.
The stand-up comedian you mentioned earlier is a perfect example. The performance, the need for laughter and validation, it can be this incredibly productive, creative distraction that's actually compensating for deep-seated emotional issues.
Yes. They are using a powerful, highly structured distraction to avoid confronting a difficult truth. So the diagnostic question you have to ask yourself is this: am I turning toward my life or am I turning away from it?
So the challenge for you, the listener, is to practice some radical self-observation about your own personal distractions. Examine your habits. When stress hits, what do you immediately reach for?
When you feel that dip in your mood after a tough phone call, what specific content do you start consuming on your phone?
Use that habit like a diagnostic tool.
Exactly. It's a hack. If you find yourself needing to binge watch some escapist TV show right after a meeting with your boss, that behavior is an indicator that the meeting triggered a high level of stress in you. Observing when and why you deploy these automatic tools is the first step toward figuring out the real problem you need to face later on.
If the answer is always turning away, if the distraction becomes the destination, then these first aid tools aren't serving their purpose.
Okay, so we've laid out the map. But before we wrap up, we have to cover a few final critical notes on how to make sure these tools actually work when a crisis hits.
And the first one is absolutely non-negotiable. Practice under load.
This is it. You cannot wait until your stress is at a 10 out of 10 to try 4-7-8 breathing for the very first time. It won't work.
Because your brain won't know what to do.
If you only practice these skills when you're perfectly calm, at a 0 out of 10, your brain won't register them as an accessible tool during an emergency. You have to practice when there is some load. A 3 out of 10, maybe a 4.
Use them when you're stuck in traffic.
Yes. Use them when you're mildly frustrated with a friend. Use them when a meeting is dragging on and you're getting agitated.
You don't train for a marathon on the day of the race. You train when you're just tired. You're building the neurological pathways so the skill becomes automatic when you need it most.
The next point is, make it your own.
The list we've given, TIP-PP, S02E05, improve, it's huge, but it's not a mandatory checklist you have to complete.
Not at all. If the idea of splashing ice water on your face just sounds horrible to you, or if counting your breaths makes you more stressed, abandon that tool immediately. Find something else.
You have to find your unique combination of things that work for you.
Yes. If cooking is a physical, mindful activity that calms you down, then that's your intense exercise and your senses tool all in one. If organizing your spice rack provides that deep focus, that's your one thing. The truth is, many of us are already doing these things unconsciously just to get by. Now we want you to do them consciously and intentionally.
This should be empowering, not restrictive.
Exactly. And that leads to the final and maybe most common trap. Avoid the perfection trap. Do not let the use of the tool become a new source of anxiety and self-judgment.
I'm not doing my crisis breathing right.
Exactly. If you try for 4-7-8 and you only manage 3-5-6, or you feel like the cold water didn't work perfectly, do not beat yourself up. The intent is progress, not perfection. If you catch yourself judging the quality of your crisis response, deploy S02E05 immediately and go back to just observing.
The goal is just to get from a life-threatening 10 down to a manageable 6. That's it.
That's the only goal.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've basically established a tactical map for survival. When stress, whether it's negative distress or positive eustress, starts to overwhelm you, you have to immediately choose one of 3 doors.
You can choose the body, using TIPP for the fastest, most primitive physiological reset. You're leveraging real biological reflexes like the mammalian diving response.
Or you choose the mind, using S02E05 and improve to interrupt those racing thoughts and redirect your focus.
Or you choose the senses, using self-soothing and grounding techniques to anchor yourself in the present moment, like in that integrated coffee ritual.
And we really hammered home that critical distinction. These tools are a bridge. They're a temporary survival structure, not a permanent home.
You use them intentionally to regulate your intensity and buy yourself enough time for your thoughtful, rational self to come back online.
Because the ultimate goal of this whole journey is not to live in a state of constant avoidance. It's not to be perpetually distracted.
The goal is to build the capacity and the skill set to be able to successfully face stressful situations, good or bad prepared, grounded, and consciously aware.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into crisis survival. I know it's a tough topic, but it is such an essential first step.
And next time, we're going to move beyond the first aid. We'll get into the long-term work of emotion regulation. We'll start to learn the sophisticated skills you need to actually face, rather than flee from your most challenging emotions. We'll talk about what to do once you're standing on the other side of that bridge.
A necessary and exciting next step. We'll talk to you soon.